computer. Welcome out, everyone. I'm going to go to share here. And I'm going to hit the presentation. Awesome. Let's see here. All right. Well, I'm super excited for today. And I'm super grateful that we got such a huge response to this special edition of the Mastermind. And I kind of covered some of these models, and we had a few of us online here a couple of weeks ago. And then it was requested that we actually build a PowerPoint out of those comments and basically present some models to you that have been really powerful for people. Not just recently, but some of these models I've developed years and years ago, to help businesses in general and help people with their entrepreneurial mindsets and help people think differently. Because I find most of the time, what's preventing you from thinking big, for example, or playing small and thinking big, is often just how you view yourself. And so I've in trying to explain that to people or help people get through that, I've developed some models that try to help you clarify why it is that you behave a certain way, why you operate a certain way, and what you can do to kind of create awareness about it and then start to move yourself into a new space. Because once you unlock your potential, then it's awesome. Now, for unlocking my potential, you can't do this without being a self-respecting oil company, without having used our oils. But some oils that I used right before this presentation is, first I used Breathe Oil to help open up my sinuses and help me get more oxygen to my brain and things like that. And the second oil that I used a few minutes ago was Wild Orange, because that's basically an oil of abundance. And since we're talking about that today, I thought that would be awesome. Awesome oils to use. Plus, it just smells really good. All right, so let's get into this here a little bit, see if it's going to let me move. So this is a little bit about myself. I know most of you have probably known me for years, but there might be some new people on the call. Basically, I'm in a summary or a nutshell, I'm Rod Richardson. I'm a blue diamond in doTERRA. Our team, these stats are actually a little old, 9-year stats, and I'm actually at 11 years now. So the numbers are considerably different. We're probably more towards 40 million in volume. I think we have about 140,000 people worldwide, in every state, 51 countries across the world. But primarily, the reason I do doTERRA now is very different from when I started. And we're going to talk a little bit about whys today as we do this, and how you're probably responding to the world. But my personal mission to lift and liberate the world is different than when I started. When I very first started, all I needed was to buy my own groceries. And so when that evolved, that quickly evolved. And then once I started achieving certain levels of financial success, then I had to find deeper meaning in all of that to keep the motivation going. And so we're going to cover some of that as well today. And the models that I'm going to cover are these are what I refer to as anchor models. And some of you are probably familiar with anchor wisdoms, which are the phrases that we've created that help guide people. This is the next level of that, and these are anchor models. And I actually have a couple of dozen anchor models that eventually, we've probably taught some of you at different points. So we've kind of taken 4 of these and have really start to kind of pull them together for you today to really think about how your 2021 is going to unroll, how your doTERRA business is going to be for you. And hopefully through looking at these models and really deciding where you're at in these spaces, you'll be able to identify key things that may be holding you back that are probably rooted just simply in your way of thinking. And so the 4 models that we're going to cover today is our why pyramid, a mindset scale, we have a pathway to wealth, and the river of transactions. And so these are some really cool models, and these models have kind of become language over the years for people to describe certain things. And see if I can get that to advance. There we go. All right. So the why pyramid. Okay. So this is gonna begin. It's basically 3 distinct phases that directly impact your why, and it probably largely is the source driver of your motivation. The very base of this is your needs. In other words, a strong or powerful need. The more powerful that need is, or the more pending or the more looming it is, the more it causes you to be reactionary. In other words, you're moving based on outward force. For instance, doTERRA started during one of the greatest recessions that's existed since the Great Depression. So if you think about that, we had a whole bunch of really talented people that were suddenly in severe need. And as a result of that, a lot of people that probably wouldn't have looked at network marketing in the beginning did. And of course, now that transformation has revolutionized the industry in a way, because lots of very talented people, very credible people, very serious business people have come to network marketing to create a credible business opportunity, which is what happened in doTERRA. But if you're driven by the need, if you think about that in terms of this process, if you're driven by needs, in other words, you need to pay your bills, or you need to drive the kids to school, or you need to go to the hospital, all of these things are pending, and they're creating a force within you that's moving you forward because you're afraid of the consequence. Okay, so if you're driven by need, it's because you're afraid of the consequence of not following through with the action. And so your mind has probably painted some sort of futuristic picture of what would happen to you if you don't respond. And so depending on where you're at in that need level, you might be at a state, as we like to say in the oil world, homeostasis, where basically maybe you feel like all your needs are fundamentally met and there's no looming doom or things that are pressuring you to do something. And so because of that, you kind of skid into a place where you go into inaction because the need isn't there for you. And if you're in that position, then you're a pain-driven person. In other words, you only move when there's motivation for you to move. Okay, and so that brings us into the next phase. Now, if you run into that need and you haven't established firm dreams in your life, then you'll probably enter a why crisis. So once the need is solved, then there's no reason for the reaction. If you think like animals in the wild, a deer, for example, if they're threatened by a predator, are going to run, and they're going to exert all this. They're going to bolt and they'll run through fences and trees, and they'll cross all kinds of barriers until the threat isn't present anymore. And then of course they relax and they go back to grazing on the grass or whatever they do. And so then you enter a why crisis, right? The need to move disappears, unless you're a person that's pleasure driven. So if you're fundamentally pleasure driven, that means that you think about what could be for you, and you establish dreams for yourself. And dreaming is actually a really healthy exercise. I find it alarming, actually, as I go throughout the world, and I am confronted many times by the number of people who don't dream, and it's startling to me. I've talked to some people that have said they don't bother dreaming because their expectations are always crushed, so they just quit expecting anything. And then they just kind of allow life to go. Now that even comes close to home, even in my own household. And so I understand why people might feel that way, that your dreams are tender and you're afraid to put them out there for fear that they'll get crushed. But if you're really fueled by wants, if you're motivated, then you probably have a set of dreams or things in your life that you want to be accomplished, and you believe in them so much that you're motivated to move forward. And you'll cross the barriers and you'll face the difficulties to help your dreams come true. I would say that I'm that kind of person. That's once my immediate need was met, I didn't have any troubles seeing that as my doTERRA business was building in success. All of a sudden I realized, hey, wait a minute, this model works and I can fulfill my dreams. And all of a sudden that became my new driver. And I started pursuing a lot of wants. And then maybe you reach a point in which you get all the things that you wanted to acquire. So if you wanted a new car, for example, or you wanted to live in a better neighborhood, or you wanted to send your kids to school without student loans, or you wanted to support your parents, and then all of a sudden your business got big enough, and then you were able to do some of those things and start to fulfill your wants, and all of a sudden you found yourself in another why crisis. And this comes to the top of this pyramid, which is the quest. Now, the quest means that you're a purpose-driven person. And you kind of, in my mind, this is something that you can't really proactively search for. I think it's something that you can prepare yourself for and you can be open to, but I think the quest actually calls you. And I've gone to lots and lots of doTERRA meetings where people maybe try to get you to identify some sort of quest or something that's bigger than you and can keep you motivated. But then I watch distributors over and over again, not really grasping a hold of what they don't think is possible. And so because that vision or something, or that esoteric thing is so far outside of their motivating factors, you're not driven by the quest. And so I believe that the quest needs to find you. And I believe that the quest seeks you out when you've built basically the base to be able to fulfill it. And now this can happen at a variety of levels. It's not necessarily confined. It's not necessarily confined to specific individuals at specific levels. I think a quest, for example, if most of your needs are met in your world and you already have a lot of what you want, you don't have to be a big giant rank in doTERRA in order for a quest to find you in this environment. And so the quest, but you have to be fundamentally prepared for the quest to arrive. I would say that my quest really gained solidification. I had the idea in my mind, but I think where it really went to my heart is one year, the incentive trip for doTERRA was in Jamaica. And I went to Jamaica with a whole bunch of people from doTERRA. And there was a whole group of blue and presidential diamonds that decided to stay through Sunday and attend a church in Jamaica. We thought that would be fun to do. And so on Sunday, we had, I think, 3 busloads of blue and presidential diamonds. Could you imagine that? 174 blue and presidential diamonds on their way to church in Jamaica. I mean, what a crowd. And we, as we're driving through town, I'm looking out the windows and I'm looking at the desperate poverty that exists everywhere. I mean, roadways were crumbling, buildings were crumbling, people were just mingling on the street with no purpose. There was people just sitting on blankets. There were, clothing, lots of dirt. And I mean, the despair was really palpable. And then we arrive at the little chapel. And of course, these 3 busloads of blue and presidential diamonds roll into this little church. And there happened to be a 14-year-old girl that was assigned to speak that day. She was the speaker. And we're all sitting there, and this little girl gets up in front and she starts pounding the pulpit. And what does she say? But she says, our country needs entrepreneurs to come. And I was like, what? She immediately got my attention. I was like, this is the best church ever, man. We're going to talk about entrepreneurs. And she said, she basically started to talk about how poverty had gripped her country and how there was no opportunity, and that their men needed opportunity, and that they were in the streets and things like that. And I thought, wow, that's really powerful. And the gal sitting next to me was another Blue Diamond. And she leaned over and she kind of whispered to me. She said, I bet she doesn't know who she's talking to. A room full of the wealthiest people in the world. And that kind of sank in. I thought, wow, that really is funny. Here's a little gal got up making a plea and a call for entrepreneurs to come and create opportunity in her country so that they can alleviate poverty in their world. And I thought, and she just happened to be doing that on a day when 174 of the wealthiest people in the world were sitting in front of her. And as I was sitting there, a little voice speaks into my mind and into my heart. And it basically just says, you could do something about it. Now, as I've realized, I built my doTERRA business over the years. Of course, I have a considerable team that spans the globe. And I have a lot of my needs and wants are fulfilled. And I was thinking to myself and pondering the idea over and over and over again, how is it, or what do you do? Is it enough for just me to have a massive worldwide network with all this incredibly trained leadership that has access to all this capital? And the words network, leadership, and capital was kind of emerging or rolling through me. And at this moment in Jamaica, I realized that with a worldwide network and the leadership that I had established with the access to the capital that we have access to, I realized that we could, in fact, solve that problem if we wanted to. And it started to emerge the idea of lifting and liberating the world, which has become kind of why I continue to build doTERRA even at this level. As I keep growing and things like that, the question of why often comes up, and I've realized it's because of what we can do if we do it. We have the power to step into these countries. Even as a member of doTERRA, you're creating opportunity to alleviate poverty in countries all over the world, and you're creating entrepreneurial opportunities through our farm network. In fact, doTERRA at the Blue and Presidential Diamond Retreat here this last month basically said we now employ 93,000 farmers in our micro farm programs in third world countries. Now, if you think about that, that's an astounding number of people that now have access to life. So just by being engaged in doTERRA, you're lifting and liberating the world. Just by making your order, you're lifting and liberating the world. So a lot of this why is being fulfilled. So the quest comes back to what can you do personally? And this is the part that finds you. And when it does, then generally you find the new burst of motivation you need. Now, if you're totally pain driven and you run out of needs, then you have to create a new need. And there's different things that you can do to create discomfort in your life to force a need in your world. Now, you can either do that on purpose or you'll do it subconsciously. And what I mean by that is generally once people reach a certain level, if you start to feel like you haven't deserved that specific level, you'll start on a route of self-sabotage, and you'll make sure that you create that need in your world. And I don't know why you do it. I don't know why I do it, but because I'm aware of it, oftentimes I can catch myself setting myself up for a self-sabotage. And at that moment, I have to step in and regroup, because if you don't get control of that, you'll throw your whole work down the toilet. And I've watched people do that because of pride or because of hurt or whatever it is that they do, and they throw the whole work away. And and that's super unfortunate. So that's the why pyramid. So let's go into this in the mindset scale and think about where you are on basically on this scale. So on this one side, we have scarcity, and scarcity is a mindset of poverty. And ironically, ironically, the big factor in this, the thing that keeps you scarce, is the idea that money is created from your effort. Now, if you think about this, almost everyone in the universe believes that worth is created from your effort. And there's a lot of reinforcement for this. Even if you go into the Bible, you have scriptures that basically say things like, from the sweat of thy brow, thou shalt earn the bread, you get the bread that you eat all the days of your life. So if you think about that, there's this big push internally that everything is created from your effort. And then you start to make assumptions with that, and you start to determine that your work by hour is worth a certain amount of money. And when you do that, when you get into that mindset, then suddenly money is limited by time. And so when you start to program and you say, okay, if I have a job and I make $50,000 a year, and but you want to buy $1 million house, and then all of a sudden you're going, well, I could never buy that $1 million house because I make $50,000 a year, and to make $1 million would be, it's every 2 years is 100,000, so that means every 20 years is $1 million, but I'm going to have to spend a bunch of that before I get there. So there's never going to be $1 million is basically what you conclude, right? Because you're looking at it all in terms of time as a direct connection to money. And so this forces upon us a natural scarcity. And it puts us in a position where we start to believe and put effort towards things based on our measurement of belief, basically, if that makes any sense. So on the other side of the scale, if we had abundance. Now, abundance is a wealth mindset. And this is the idea that's fundamentally rooted that you view the creation of money through the development and the provision of value. In other words, you create value in now value has any number of interpretations. So let me give you an example of that. I have one guitar that's worth $200. I have another guitar that's worth $20,000. Now, both of them are fundamentally the same. Both of them were created in the exact same factory, probably by the exact same people who, ironically, make the same amount of money per hour. Let that sink in for a minute. So you have two very different instruments created by the very same people for the same amount of money. But what makes one more valuable than the other? Well, the one is built out of common wood, wood that's widely available. In other words, there's no scarcity to it, so the value of it is limited, right? If there's a whole bunch of something, the price goes down. If there's more people that if there's more supply than demand, the price goes down. Okay. Now, the other guitar is made out of extremely rare wood. In fact, there's only one tree that has the legal papers to be made into guitar wood. So as you can see, the wood on it is extraordinarily limited. In other words, it's very valuable. It has a very limited supply and a very large demand. And so the price goes way up. So now you have the same instrument in two different forms, created almost identically, but worth significantly different amounts of money. And so if you kind of grasp that concept, then you start to understand that if I start to view money creation as the creation of value, then it looks differently. Now, let me bring that same concept home to your doTERRA business. So you do your doTERRA business and you start out and you work your guts out. You're like throwing in 100 hours a week. You're talking to everybody, and you're failing right and left. And at the end of the month, you pull a $20 doTERRA check, and you're like, "What? You know, I could have worked at McDonald's and made more money." What's your correct? You could have made more money in that time, but then it ends. Now on the other side, if you realize the long-term perspective of creating value in your doTERRA business, you would understand that commission is generated from the sale of product. All right. And then you would know that every permanent account that you set up will deliver a stream of income. So if I work my guts out and I find one active account, for example, that account could pay anywhere from $2 to $7 on a qualified loyalty reward order every single month that it runs. Okay, so say that person remains a customer now for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years at $7 a month. It's $7 a month or whatever it is. And you start to do the math on that. You times that by 12 and you times that by the number of years. And all of a sudden you realize that that one account was probably worth a few $100. Now, if I add 2 accounts, or say I add 100 accounts to my business, and they're delivering anywhere between $2 and $7 per month for these accounts. Well, now I have a residual stream now that's producing maybe upwards of $700 a month. Okay. Now, so if I had put a whole bunch of effort in continuously, now I could stop and still have a stream of several $100s a month that continues on for the lifetime of those customers. Okay. That's the creation of value. On our team, if you can imagine that, we now have 140,000 accounts. Well, that interprets into a lot of residual flow for a lot of people, by the way. In fact, half of the value of the sales is paid to the field. So when I say that Edge Team International has $40 million in sales, you have to realize that $20 million of that is paid to you. So our team is generating $20 million a year currently in commissions for our field. And that, of course, is being divided out between a number of different leaders all over the world. Anywhere from people getting $20 checks to people getting multi-$1,000 checks. And so it rolls based on the value that's created. So if you start to realize that, you realize that if I exercise my time and energy towards things that build value, that constantly pay, then all of a sudden we're in more of an abundant mindset. And that's kind of what happens to you in network marketing. We had a meeting here in my office last night, and there was one of our gold leaders, Nikki Poppy, on our team here, who had talked about her dream was to become a CPA. And so she's been in school and she's pursuing her career. And at the same time, she says, and because of that, she loves her job. So she has a job and she builds her doTERRA business also. And so as a result, she said, the effect of that is that she doesn't have any student loan debt. She owns her home now. And she says she has more in savings now than she knows what to do with. So now she has to figure out how to invest. And so if you think about that, this is somebody that's achieved their goals and dreams and is getting a sense of abundance mindset, even though she's not like a giant rank in doTERRA. She's running around the mid-level ranks and still growing and working her way towards diamond and above. which I'm sure she'll do, and she'll be able to keep her dreams going all at the same time. But if she was really stuck in value per hour, she wouldn't have been able to create the side business. And so thinking about how you view or where you're at in your mindset of viewing abundance or scarcity, whether you believe that money is generated by time and you program your world that way, because it will, and it is if you work in the world that way. Like if I truly believe that time generates money, then I'm going to invest all of my time into working basically for money. And as a result, that'll have a finite limit until I can get my mindset realizing. Here's another example that I gave the other night. It takes most people a lifetime to earn a couple of $1 million, even if you have a significant job. Okay? And but at one period of my life, when I was 30 years old, I actually created $30 million in 18 months. Now, the reason I did that, or how I did that, was because I viewed the creation of money based on the value. And I created something that had huge value, and people started to exchange very large transactions for that value that I had created. And so it's a really good thing. And this is probably an area that will really is probably eating your lunch, in proverbially speaking of that way. All right. So if you're feeling that scarcity, you're going to feel a lot of frustration with your lack of progress. You're going to be constantly nagging at yourself because you're not doing enough, and you're not doing this and you're not doing that. And you're going to be mad at doTERRA, and you're going to be mad at yourself and mad at your leaders. And the more scarce you are, the more anger you're going to feel about your business. Okay. Now, if you go to the other side of that abundance, you'll actually have a sense of gratitude instead of frustration. And you'll feel extreme gratitude for those that are around you, supporting you, for the company and everything that it does for you. And you'll feel grateful for your team. So you can think about it that way. Abundance also is not so much about the work as it is cultivating the value. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next model. Okay. This is the pathway this took me forever to figure out, guys. So I hope you take a note on it. It's going to seem overly simplistic, but I guarantee you that almost no one is doing this. Okay. And even though when I say this, you're going to go, duh, that's logical. Almost no one is doing it. Okay. And I'll explain why. Okay. And basically this is your pathway to wealth. It starts with income. So the basic formula is income, expand your income, invest. Okay. Now, income, that inner circle there, is basically your needs. That's what you need. That would be your nut, right? What does it take to keep you alive and happy? And that's the inner circle. The inner circle is going to consume. It's going to take what you have. And so you have to be able to figure out how to expand your income. Okay. And you have to be able to expand your income beyond the circle. So this is the anchor wisdom for this. If you have the Anchor Wisdoms book, of course, is be income focused. Now, what that means is you have to take care of your needs, right? You have to, there's risk and opportunity and reward and things like that you might strategically take at certain periods of time. But within all of that risk, you have to figure out how to take care of your needs at the same time, because you just don't really need to starve to death in the process. I've done that before. It's not very effective. In fact, I spent most of my life trying to do this model backwards. Okay. So now expanding your income can be really simple. It could mean that you have a job and you live off that income, or someone in your household has that job and it's filling the needs of the home. And then it could be that your doTERRA business is actually your vehicle to expand your income. And the way that you would do that, if you're not currently doing that, is you would immediately set up your own bank account for doTERRA. And as you earn in doTERRA, that money goes into that doTERRA bank account and not your general home checking. And the reason for doing that is many of you might make a small check in doTERRA, and it might be going into your general household fund. And then you feel like you're not making enough. And then it starts to feel like it's not worth it. And then you start to think that you're not making money. And then you start to go into frustration. And now if you think about what happens here is if you take every check and it's outside of your home checking account, it's in its own bank account, then what'll happen is even if you're earning a small amount in doTERRA, you will see that you're earning. And if you allow that check to continue to build, it'll start to create a little side pool for you. And then periodically you could draw it out and pay off a debt and make some sort of financial progress in your life, okay? Or you could invest it into your business. You could keep it all doTERRA to keep growing your teams and expanding the value. But at that point, you're actually in control of it, right? This really is a model about getting control of what you earn. Because if you consume everything that comes in and you can't get control of your income, you'll be broke no matter how much you earn. Now, here's a concept too. The reason I approached this backwards for so many years is because I always thought that you invested to create an income. And what I didn't realize all this time is that investment is something that you do with income. And until I got that dialed in, I was having a terrible, terrible time becoming truly wealthy. And once I figured this out, I started focusing on income. And then I started focusing on controlling my income, i.e. expand income. Got control, and then I started using that money and purposely investing to create growth. Okay, whether it was into my doTERRA business, into travel. Now I'm into a phase, of course, where I have a broad diversification of investment. That has everything from professionally managed funds to self-managed funds to land to any other types of investment, new venture stuff, new corporate stuff, expansion to travel into the team. So now I have a division of accounts. I actually have business accounts and I have investment accounts that are all separated. Okay. So that's what happens when you focus on income and you constantly expand your personal cash flow. And then you start developing a good strategy to do that. And then that is how you become wealthy. And at that point, your fear in life will switch to an abundance mindset. And you'll realize that you have plenty, you're okay, you're not going to die. And the fascinating thing about money is that they always say money can't buy happiness, and that might be true. But money does solve almost every problem. And it's such an interesting state to be in a position where money can actually solve any barrier. In fact, the hardest thing I have as a parent, a lot of times my kids' problems are largely financially rooted, and they're very easy for us to solve. But not solving them becomes the new challenge. Becoming a steward of your resources and learning what to solve and what not to solve, what barriers to break down, and what areas to allow people to experience their own growth, because without pain, there's no growth. All right, now for the mother of models. This model will probably keep you awake for the next 72 hours. This model is called the River of Transactions, and is fundamentally based on the idea that every single day, there's about $3 trillion that moves from one hand to another. So if you think about that, that's a flow. That's a transactional flow. It's a river of economy. Now, the way that you view the world will largely determine how large you can create. So for example, here's paradigm one. This is the box of circumstances. So if you can imagine, when you look at the box, if you think about what comes to mind, you realize that the box has no inherent resource inside of it. It's just a box. And if you're within that box, you don't have access to anything. And now you can tell if you're in the box of circumstances, if you're allowing your circumstances to run your life. And you can tell immediately if this is the case, because you'll use words like, I would, but, or I can't because. So for example, I had a friend of mine call and he said, "Hey, Rob, would you like to invest in this business venture that we have going?" And I said, I would, but I don't have the resources. I can't do that right now. Okay. Now, I realized years later that I didn't have the resources to play at the big table. So that was my circumstance was creating me, and it was pushing me out of the circles that I wanted to play in. Okay. So now the next paradigm 2, is the bucket of limitations. Okay. Now, if you imagine water, for example, you need water every day. You have to have it. And you'll notice that in the box, you have no water. And in the bucket of limitations, you have limited water. And it's limited by the scale of the bucket. So if you're a time equals money person, for example, then money is always going to be limited by time. And so your bucket will basically have the boundaries of your time and the worth of your hour. And so if you look at that, it causes you to react in very specific ways, because your view of the world is that it's finite. Resources are finite. You can only do certain things at over a certain period of time. It's all limited by the capacity of that bucket, whatever the capacity of your personal bucket is. If you were standing in the desert and somebody handed you a bucket and you had to survive for a week, well, you would utilize that bucket probably accordingly. You'd probably ration it. You'd do a number of things, okay? Now, if you're operating in life, think about how that translates. And you start rationing your world. Everything's under a ration because of severe limitations. And then that starts to shape your future result, because you're always rationing and always holding back. It's fascinating. I have a number of examples that I could share here locally that probably, but I don't want to implicate people. But examples, really stark examples of where really limited thinking has really prevented a lot of potential growth. And so it's something to be aware of. Now, the third paradigm is the river of transactions. Now, imagine for a moment, if you said, you need water, you have to survive on it. What is your need for water if you're standing in a river versus standing in a desert with a bucket of water? Now, if you're standing in a river, what you realize is that everything is present. If you needed a drink, you could take it. So you actually probably don't have a bucket, because, and if you did, it would probably be for a strategic purpose. It wouldn't be because you needed it. You'd also know that the river flows constantly. So not only is it ever present, but it's ever producing. Now, in this space, this becomes a space of creation where you realize everything's present. I was in a meeting, a big conference one time, and I was the featured speaker, and I was presenting this model. And I asked the audience, I said, does anybody here have a dream? And in this audience were a whole bunch of entrepreneur people. There was a whole row of people that were multimillionaires and things like that. And there was a guy kind of sitting in the back, and he said, I have a dream. And I said, what's your dream? And he said, my dream is to build a school for a musical school. And that school, and I go, what's the school going to do? And he goes, well, the school is going to provide opportunity for people to really express and grow their talents and things like that, and had scholarships. And it was a whole musical program to really inspire people to embrace music and things like that, which is great, really noble thing. And I said, great, are you going to build your school? Or how much does it cost to build your school? And he goes, it's going to take $50 million to build my school. And I go, great, do you have 50 million bucks? And all of a sudden he went quiet and he hung his head down and he basically said, no, I don't. And I go, so does that mean you can't build your school? He goes, no, I don't have the resources to build my school. Where was he at? I can't, because he wasn't even limited. And this guy wasn't even limited. He just flat out couldn't. And if you think about that, I said, I reframed him a little bit. And I said, do you suppose that if you were to paint your vision clear enough and write it down in a presentable form, that there's access to enough money in this room to fund your school? And he goes, well, I suppose there is. And I go, of course there is. You know, there's a whole row of multimillionaires right there, right in the front row, just heard your dream. And then I said, here's the thing you don't understand. Every brick that's going to build your school was formed millions of years ago. The people that are going to design your school have already gone to college and are already trained and are already specialists. I said the students that are going to attend your school are already born, and the instruments that they're going to play are already created with huge factories that are already producing them in numbers untold. And I go, so if the people are trained, the bricks are made, the instruments available, and the students are waiting, and the money exists, what's your problem? It's simply because of the way that you view the world. If you become a commander of resources, those things can be pulled in. In other words, all he had to do was build a business plan, a logical presentation, show that it could actually work, tell the money that it's safe, and the money would come. And the architect would be glad to do it. The brick masons would be glad to sell the bricks. They're waiting for you to buy them. It's already all created. Everything you're imagining right now is already built and was made and prepared many, 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 many years ago, way before you were born. And if you can get yourself into that state, then you can start commanding resources, and then there isn't anything of any size that you cannot create. Let that sink in for a moment. All right, so this is the end of our 4 models. If you guys are interested, I do have the Anchor Wisdoms book, and we do, if you want to continue the entrepreneurial conversation, we do have the group Anchor Wisdoms with an S, plural, Anchor Wisdoms on Facebook. You can follow me on Instagram as well for the Anchor Wisdoms, and I just constantly pump out this type of information for you, okay? And then for those of you that are in Europe, we have Ulysses that has printed those books in Europe for local distribution there as well. All right, I believe
almost done.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And so this, I really believe that this book contains principles that can change the world and change a lot of people. I lose a tremendous amount of money on this book, so I don't want you to think, oh, yeah, it's this huge thing. I am spending several times more than the return could ever be on this particular project. So I don't want you to think it's about that. This is really another quest because I believe that people that are inspired with principles of free enterprise will actually support and encourage freedom throughout the world. And so I'm excited to do that. It's a little bit more of my quest. All right, so let's go into, I'm going to stop sharing screen here. And I'm going to open up the mastermind. We have just a few minutes. I would like to hear whoever would like, go ahead, just click, raise your hand, and share with us the model that was most impactful for you and why, and maybe what you're going to do about it. We have just a few minutes, so let's get some of you to share. I'm scanning. There's an awful lot of people on the call, so don't be afraid.
Hey, Rod.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm lucky enough to have heard your wisdoms for a long time. And as a result, I've I've heard several of your presentations here, but the one that I hadn't heard until today was the box, the bucket, and the river. And I'm a very visual person. And so picturing a box with the potential of closing a lid, or a bucket that's semi-open, and then the river that's flowing, you know, I really appreciated that visual, and I loved the language of box circumstances. I like when there's a script that follows, because then I can catch myself. If I find myself using those words, then I know that that's where I'm at, that's where I'm choosing to live. And then just some of the different, because I don't think that anyone is ever always, well, I guess maybe, but most people I know aren't always in the box, or always in the bucket, or always in the river. We tend to kind of skip around in those areas. And so I just appreciated the checklist to help me navigate where I'm at in that current situation. Like, am I showing up in the river? Am I showing up in the box? Am I showing up in the bucket? And just kind of keeping myself in check on that. So I appreciate that.
Right. That's like a daily thing, isn't it? I mean, I catch myself I catch myself on a day-to-day basis standing in the box. And
it may not even be daily. It could be just per conversation.
Right. Yeah, over and over again. So this is a constant. All right. So we have Boston with her hand raised.
Hi.
Hi.
So I really love to hear about the pathway to wealth. I thought that was very expansive and how to invest. You know, obviously you need to get your needs met, but like, I never really thought to, like, you know, start to save and expand it and then invest.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to know more about that at another time, but I thought that was really interesting.
Right. Yeah. Investment is a huge area in itself. I mean, we could have I subscribe to whole groups just to try to figure out investment. So it's definitely a big deal. But once you figure it out, once you do that, it's super awesome. Boston's been a great entrepreneur here, making all kinds of new goals and achieving her objectives. So way to operate, Boston. All right, so we have, let's see, Glenn, do we have any other hands raised? We still have a little bit of time.
Hey, Rod, I don't know if you can see her, but Casey has her hand raised.
Okay, go ahead. I wasn't able to see her. Go ahead.
Hi, Rod.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for this presentation, by the way. Everything was just amazing. But I do want to say that one thing that I had not heard of before is the why pyramid. And it really helped me to like calm down, like always trying to find my why. What's my why? What's my why? And it really just put everything into perspective, and it helped me tremendously. And the river of transactions, I needed that reminder today. Thank you so much for that. Well, I appreciate it.
Excellent. All right, Petrea.
One thing I've heard a lot of your trainings too, and the river, I agree with everybody on that. Awesome. One thing that flipped around during this session for me is the scarcity and abundance meter, right? We all want to work from that place of abundance, but I kind of flipped it around. When you talked about scarcity makes you feel frustrated and a lack of progress, where on the abundance side, you feel gratitude and grateful for where you've made it and where you're going and all the things available to you. And I just kind of was thinking about reverse engineering that. And so like, if I want to move from abundance, if I can focus on feeling grateful, I can bring more abundance. Where if I keep feeling frustrated, I'm going to stay in that scarcity. So just reverse engineering it and saying, okay, focus on feeling gratitude, and then that scarcity will fade and that abundance will grow. I don't know, for some reason it just hit me more today. Thank you.
That's awesome. What a great perspective as well. I like that that idea of reverse engineering. That's something I do on a lot of different in a lot of different scenarios as well. I find that reverse engineering really brings clarity. So I love that idea. Excellent. All right, Heidi Meadows.
I love that last story that you shared, of the man, saying that he didn't have the funds to build the school, and that, to become a commander of our resources. And it just got me thinking, I'm like, I wonder how many things are truly in my reach that I just put that limit on, for XYZ limitations, that the things are already there. So that's definitely going to give me a lot to think about.
That's awesome. So what is it, Heidi, that you're striving for? What's your school that you're building?
The first school is financial freedom for my family.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. I'm excited.
And does it have a target? What is your target for that?
Like what do you mean?
Say financial freedom. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Debt free.
Commission level.
A what?
A specific commission level or things like that you need to achieve?
My first one would probably be 75,000 in a year.
Okay. And that'll create financial. Does that fulfill the first circle, or does that allow you to expand? In other words, when you think income, expand your income, invest, does that allow you to do all of that, or does that just meet the needs of the inner circle?
I guess the first two.
Okay. That's good because if you have the first two, you have the ability to invest.
Yes.
Which makes all things abundant, right?
Thank you.
That's good. I just wanted to put that out because sometimes we create a vision and we'll grow that inner circle to meet that vision. In other words, if you say 75,000, for example, creates financial freedom, if you haven't really thought about the whole model, what will happen is you'll grow into the 75,000 and pretty soon that will be the inner circle. Mm. And so you have to get very purposeful. Now, I'm just going to throw this out as just a bonus tip. But if you can figure out how to gain between 25% and 30% of your income, right now I'm striving for 50% to gain control of 50% of my income. But right now I have control of 30%. And what I had to do is, even as I've grown, if you haven't defined what percentage goes to what, you'll just keep growing and expanding into that, whatever that is. And so if you start to think in terms of percentages, then you can start at any level. For example, I have my daughters, my youngest daughter, who's surviving off of her grade money. Right. So it's, in our world, it's not enough to pay power bills and things like that. But in her world, she's actually got control of 90% of it. And so because of that, she's actually already asking me about investment. So think about that for a minute. She's already earning, her $200 a year or whatever it is. But she's already banked it enough and gotten so much control of it that she has the ability to think about investing now. And that's really cool. So what I'm saying, Heidi, is that while you're doing there, establish your percentages. What is your expanded rate? Turn that into my lifestyle, for example, right now is running at 22% of income. So that means that I have control of the rest of it. And now my goal is to get that down to 10%, but actually increase my standard of living. So start thinking in percentages, pre-program that. So every amount, no matter where you're at, whatever comes in, you have a point, you have a certain percent that you'll automatically move to your savings account. If you do that, you're gonna have all kinds of sudden capacity. And in 2021, you'll find yourself alleviating credit card debt, paying off cars, eliminating student loans, and I don't even care what rank you are. If you can do that, you're gonna all of a sudden have this little pool that you have command of. Super awesome. All right, did I go ahead, Jerry?
Jenny's trying to raise her hand and can't figure it out.
You go,
I
Jenny.
guess, can I just unmute myself? I guess I didn't want to try it and then just railroad somebody. Hey, Jerry. Hey, Rod. Thank you so much for this. This is really just exactly what I think everybody needs in this new year. And I just wanted to, it's not a question, but it is definitely, you know, a kind of an inspiration from your inspiration. And, you know, we had this conversation, you and I, last January when we were in Utah for the Back to Basics in that hallway. And I was really, you know, I'm talking about the why pyramid and, you know, kind of gotten like our needs were met in our family, you know, our want through doTERRA had happened, you know, some retirement dreams that my husband and I had for our family became a reality. And then it's just kind of like, now what, like, right. And that's once again, that, you know, where do you go? And I remember struggling and I think it was like in tears, like, I just don't know what my calling is. I just don't know. I know it's got to be bigger than our family. It's got to be bigger than me. It's got to be bigger than it's got to be bigger. And you're like, you don't have to know the answer. And I just remember like what a pivotal point that was, like, just go home and open up another account and start putting money in it. So when it comes to you, that you'll be ready. You won't have to think, oh, I have to, you know, save money to be able to support this, you know, this quest, whatever it might be. And I did. And, you know, it's called Inspire. And, you know, I got several $1,000s in there and it hasn't figured it out, you know, quite yet, but it really has given me that motivation to stay connected to everything and to be able to know that it's there. We were just talking about this on our team last night about reconnecting with your why. And if it's not motivating you enough, then it has to get bigger. It has to be reevaluated and how it's always ever changing. So thank you so much. We always love listening to you.
Oh, I love that, Jenny. So what's the name of your little organization there that your savings account, you call it?
I named it Inspired. It's there to be connected to. So it's been really great. You know, it's my, you know, checking account, my savings account for my, you know, tax. And then my third is Inspire. And so that's every month my paycheck's allotted accordingly. So.
Man, I love that. And I want to make you a promise, Jenny.
Okay.
You're going to do amazing things.
Oh,
and your Inspire account is going to continue to grow. And at the right moment, it will be it'll be correctly funded for what comes calling. Because here's the thing about money: money is like a magnet, and money automatically attracts. And if, say, you went your whole life and you didn't find a purpose for it, that account would go to a purpose, and you'll define it and you'll set it up. But I believe that it will come sooner than that.
I believe it too. There's already things. It just hasn't come to complete fruition. So
let it grow.
Gave me that. Just it was grow. Yeah, let it grow. But it gave me that release of having, like, being caught. I was stuck in the space of trying to figure it out instead of just moving forward to make it, you know, make things happen. And so it was just a really great conversation and a great release. So I hope it helps other people today.
I appreciate you sharing that. That is fantastic. All right, we're a little past the time. We did start a little late, so I don't feel too bad. But we'll record this and try to get it posted up, or it is recorded, fortunately. And we'll try to get it up as soon as we can so you can share it with your teams. All right, everybody, have a happy and successful week.